Have Nancy with us tonight. Nancy is former teacher and as well psychologist and psychology. And she's also a reading specialist. She's the co-founder of Decoding Dyslexia of Massachusetts. So with no further ado, so I have Nancy with us to talk a little bit more about the whole concept of a dyslexia and as well how to inform parents, how to advocate, as well what exactly they have to look to help their children to succeed. Nancy.
Thanks, everyone. It's really an honor to be here in Boston and to come out, even if it's raining today. It's not snowing, so that's good. Not yet, anyway. It's really my pleasure to be here. I am the co-founder of Decoding Dyslexia, and Decoding Dyslexia is professionals and parents working together to raise awareness about the disability dyslexia. How many people think they have a good understanding of dyslexia? Does anyone here have a student that is, well, you don't have to raise your hand for that, but some people here might have students on the special ed plan with dyslexia. You don't need to raise your hand. But it's the most common disability, it's the most common reason for IEPs. However, you could have your category, like why you have an IEP, could be multiple things. It could be speech and language, it could be something called specific learning disability, it could be other health impaired, it could be ADHD. Any variation of humans can also have dyslexia, and it also coexists with a lot of, it can coexist with other things. So we're going to learn a little bit about dyslexia because over the past really 25 years, science has learned some new things about dyslexia. And it is that new information that has come from the neuroscience, from the research to practice. And we, as a group, wanted to raise awareness with parents, with professional educators, and also with legislators to make sure that the policies in place really benefited students with dyslexia. So tonight, we're going to start off with just a little bit of context of if you have special education plans in Massachusetts. This slide, it's just a few years old, but you can see specific learning disability. You might not be able to see because it's kind of tiny, but the most students in Massachusetts, it's the red line. The blue is the national level. And so specific learning disability, under which dyslexia typically falls, is the most frequently identified disability. And then communication, that's speech-language communication. Health can be a number of things. Many of these categories are crossover. You could have more than one, they cover more than one issue under these categories. So if this is the way it sort of plays out, the most frequently identified ones would be communication, health, and specific learning disability. And of these, almost any of these students could also have dyslexia. So it could be that your child who already has an IEP also has dyslexia. It might not be that case, but I'm just saying they do overlap. And so in Massachusetts, we're very proud of the fact that we have great standard scores. We are a high-performing state for literacy, and we are really first in the nation with, out of all of our students, so even these students are in this number. Okay, so this is all the students in Massachusetts and how well they're performing by third grade reading. Third grade reading is really important because 70% of students that are doing well in third grade reading go on to continue to, 70% of students who are not doing well in third grade continue to do poorly. So we really want to make sure that our early learners have the most support they need. And you'll notice that these are our students who are students with an IEP. And over the years, our students with an IEP, there's a gap here, and it's actually gotten a little bit wider over time. And so these are Jesse's statistics. These are, just sort of a trend so you can see. And what we're thinking is that this gap, because after third grade it becomes harder and more difficult to do that work, that if we could close this gap before it happens, if we could prevent this gap, that would be a good thing. And it just happens that the neuroscience on reading, not neuroscience on dyslexia first, just on how humans learn to read, has really exploded. Reading, because it's a behavior that we do, it was one of the first behaviors that psychologists would study to see how the brain worked. So for years, reading has been sort of the experiment or the test when people were trying to think, how does the brain work? And so over time, we learn more. Now, if you think about the solar system, let's put reading on the shelf for a second and think about the solar system. If we had no technology at all, and we just lived on Earth, we would think the Earth was flat because the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, depending on where you live, I guess, but the sun's going around and it looks like it's flat. So as we observe, human observers said that the world is flat. Remember that theory? Probably nobody here remembers that. But it was the technology of a telescope that enabled us to see that, in fact, what appeared to be a flat Earth just appeared that way, and really the science tells us that the Earth is round and it goes actually around the sun. Okay, so everybody's with me so far? This is an fMRI machine. It takes images of inside your brain, but not like an X-ray, like this is this part and that's another part. It actually measures the energy that's being put forth in different areas of the brains. So with this technology and with other technologies, I'm not a neuroscientist, so this is just like the mini version, but this machine allows us to understand which area of the brain is activated with other areas of the brain. And that's fascinating to us because all of a sudden we know more about how we learn to read than we thought before. And so instead of sort of looking at reading as what does good reading look like, we now know how do we get to be good readers. And the science is pretty strong. Okay, so the science is going to help us figure out the technology. And I put some books over there. If people are interested in this, there's some fascinating books, and there's YouTube videos. There's a whole lot of information out there. But I'm not going to give you a neuroscience talk today. I'm just going to say that people are studying this, and this is sort of the simple version. So if you notice, this is sort of like a network in the brain. Little areas are talking to other little areas in the brain. And that's sort of, it's very interesting. If I had more time, I'd love to go over it. But this is what it boils down to. In our brain, we have cells that we were born with that process visual information and send a message to our part of our brain that has meaning, that understands what it is. And it knows as soon as we see an apple, hey, that's an apple, I know what that is, okay? We also have cells right in the back of our ear, conveniently located, that process sound. Those cells right behind our ear process language and speech. So if I yelled fire, even if you didn't see a fire, you would know what that means because you're here listening to me. And your brain, you can identify immediately some image or some concept of meaning based just on my speech. So if there were no pictures and you just heard me, obviously everyone knows we can understand speech. We can make meaning from visual input, and we do this quite naturally. That's what humans do. What we don't do naturally is learn to read. To learn to read, we take these cells that each have their own little job, visual, sound, meaning, and we recycle them. We give them new jobs to do, and neuroscientists call this plasticity. So what we've learned, and again, I don't want to get too much into the research, I just want you to understand that there is a lot of research on this. I have those books, both The Reading in the Brain and Language at the Speed of Sound, and it's called The Simple View of Reading, and this information tells us that it is sound and language connecting with visual input and connecting with meaning. To build those pathways, they're not natural. We have to learn it. Just like you need to learn to swim, okay? Some kids, you can throw them in the pool, and they're going to swim. Some kids are not going to swim. Some of those kids that need help swimming might need help with breathing, holding their breath. Other kids that need help swimming might need to learn to kick or move their arms or might have trouble with those things. And so almost any human can learn to swim, but it's a learned behavior. The same with reading. Reading is not natural. And so some kids might pick up reading very quickly, and some kids are going to need help with certain areas of building this circuit, recycling and brain plasticity. They can do it, but it's going to take more effort, it's going to be more complex. And again, I don't want to get like too dirty science on you, so like if you're interested, let me know. There's so much accessible information about this. But what it boils down to is those students that have trouble with that process of taking sound, language, and the image, like the words spelt on a page, the letters, the letter formation, reading words, they have problems in some one of these areas. One area is called naming speed. So naming speed is how quickly we process information. From the minute I see it, so if somebody held up something, as soon as I see it, I would say it's a clock. And how long it takes me from the seeing to the speaking, that's called rapid naming or naming speed. People who process slowly can be very intelligent. They happen to just process that slowly. The speech doesn't come out as quickly. That can be in this pie. If you have a problem there, it can impact reading fluently. It can impact learning individual letter sounds and recalling them quickly so that you can process reading. So naming speed can be an area of deficit. Then we have this other area in the green. It's called the phonological deficit. Remember that triangle that I had up there? So we had the visual part is this rapid naming. This phonological part is a sound area. Problems processing the sounds of language, those can be a problem for people. There's a small slice. This is from the work of Mary Ann Wolfe, who's right here in Massachusetts at Tufts University, although I think she just transferred to California, but she was here. There's just always a small point that we're not sure. But the greatest majority of students who are having trouble getting that reading pathway to be built, those students fit in this blue area, and that's called double deficit. Double deficit is people that have a problem with naming speed and also have a problem with the phonological processing piece. So of all the students who are having trouble, someone or some combination of these things could be impacting their ability to read. Okay? This is just a picture of what the neural network looks like when it's sending the impulses. And the reason I put it up here is to remind people that our human brains are so resourceful and resilient. But early language development, you hear people talking about early language a lot, right? Language, early language. Language development goes leaps and bounds when children are young. And they have a lot more gray matter and white matter to build these pathways. It can still happen when people are older. Adults can still learn to read, but it's harder. It's harder to build those pathways. And I don't know how scientific it is, but when I'm coaching students that really need to get their head around why am I, a seventh grader and I'm struggling with this, but we finally found the right intervention and the child's not as motivated because they're exhausted and whatever, and I say, oh, no, because you have plasticity in your brain, and if you had, it's going to take you extra effort. Like they might not want to go to summer school. Everybody else doesn't have to go to summer school. Why do I have to go to summer school? Well, because you have a chance now, and you have to work a little harder, because if you've got sort of the neurons at sort of the beginning of the year, or when you open the box of like a Lego set, I use the Lego set, right? Or the Playmobil, I don't know, my kids are older, the kids still have that sort of thing, I don't know, whatever, erector sets, whatever kids are playing with these days, Legos. When you open the box, there's a ton of lots of little pieces. You can make the castle, you can make the pirate ship, you can make anything because you have everything. That's how we feel about kids. Young children have a lot of brain plasticity, so we want to do the most work then, and we find scientifically that it's most effective. But as kids get older, they can still build what they need to for good reading, but it takes longer. They don't have as much plasticity. And then this slide is about as sciencey as we're going to get, but it's a before and after. So typically reading children, remember that machine I showed you, the fMRI? This is like a still image from that. And it's showing that this is where the brain lights up for reading, okay? But in the dyslexic child, this area is not activated. They're not connecting either the visual image or the sound image with the other. They're not connecting the sounds and the symbols together. But after 80 hours, 1 to 2 hours a day with phonological processing, in this particular study it was phonological processing, it built up that ability, and then they were able to light up in both areas. So when we know what the right intervention is, and we try to do it early, it's much more effective. Okay? So I'm going to pause there if anybody has a question, and then we'll move on to what to do about it. Sure.
So if I take the child to the fMRI and they give him some reading, can they detect these conditions?
Excellent question. fMRIs are used, but not to diagnose. Okay? The fMRI labs are used, you're going to see it's much easier than that. You don't need to take your child to the fMRI because the fMRI studies have shown certain things, early easy screening can be done like simply and in a classroom. What the fMRI does, or how they use it, it's actually pretty interesting, and I think I'm not a neuroscientist, but Nadine Gab from the Boston Children's Hospital is, and there's some YouTube videos out there with her, and I think actually she might be coming to speak, or she was maybe planning to come to speak here. So I think I'll let her be like the expert on that. It's very cool, but no, you don't need to take your child for an MRI. It's going to be much easier for that. Anybody else? And we'll just move on to what dyslexia is. We're going to go past the science now. So dyslexia, it affects about 10 to 12% of the general population. And the earliest indicators, it's not waiting for kids to read and then struggle, although that's the way we usually find them. What we know now from all that science, and the reason I bring that up, is because phonological processing, phono is like sound, like a phonograph, right? Phonological processing, how we process sounds, really impacts the way a child learns to read. And phonological awareness, knowing how many sounds are in a word, being able to break up a sound, really makes a difference. And we can teach that. And you can teach it without letters. You can teach it when you're clapping and dancing. The fun thing about phonological processing is that it really doesn't even have to take place in a chair. So it's ideal for preschool, kindergarten, and first graders because there's no pen and pencil. In fact, you can do phonemic awareness with your eyes closed. We'll do one quick little young one, okay? So everybody close your eyes, because you don't need your eyes to do this. And you're I'm going to be the teacher, and you're going to be my class. And I'm going to say, okay, class, we're going to do a little exercise while we're waiting in line. Everybody listening, everybody's listening. And when you're in line, close your eyes and stand in line. Oh, I see everybody with their eyes closed. Great. My first word is cowboy. Everyone say cowboy. Cowboy. Great. Now say cowboy without the cow. Cowboy. Excellent, boys and girls. Okay, open your eyes. It's time for us to go to lunch. That's how easy it is. Okay? There's more than that one example, but phonological processing, there's actually a book over there called Reading Success for All. It was written for parents like years ago. You could get it, like, and download it practically for free if you know who to ask. It's not rocket science, folks. So that type of phonological processing problem, kids who have a problem with rhyming, kids who have trouble with the beat, those types of kids might have problems with their phonological processing. And so we want to give them extra instruction on it so they can have really good phonological processing while their young, their growing, healthy brains are ready for it. They've got all that gray and white matter just waiting to build something. And we're going to build phonological processing skills. And if you think, oh, but what if my kid doesn't have them? You know, is that terrible? Guess what? Adults that don't read, like from other, like say you went to some, I don't know, far off planet somewhere and found someone who had good language skills, told beautiful stories, was intelligent, but had no written language, they would have no phonological skills because you don't need them. It's like the printing press. We invented it as humans. phonological awareness is a human invention. And we have to, we carry it around in our heads, so we have to teach it to our children, okay? So that's one of the things. Letter sound knowledge. If you're going to connect the letters of a language, any language, to the sounds, you need to break them up and have the smallest bits of sound, called a phoneme, connecting to the letter or letter string. And I say letter or letter string because in English, how many letters in the alphabet we have? 26. But how many sounds are there in English? There are 44. Okay? So if we spoke Italian, there's only 25 sounds in Italian. And for their vowels, which are the hardest sounds in English, the vowel sounds, in Italy, the letter that we call E makes an A sound, and it always makes that sound. Every vowel in Italian only makes one sound. But in English, there are 15 sounds that could be made with a combination of things, okay? And so let's think about the A sound in English. Anyone want to tell me some letter combinations that could make the A sound? Shout them all out, people, it's okay. Long A.
A-Y.
A-Y. A consonant E. Someone else, like in cake, bake, right? Anyone else? A-I, like sail, or a game. A-I, A-Y, A-E, A consonant E, and there's one more. So it's even up here, I can't even think of it, but there's 5 different ways to say the long A sound in English, okay? So that connection of those sounds to the particular letters requires that rapid naming. Remember I told you from the pie, that little piece of the pie, if you had trouble with rapid naming, you might have trouble recalling your letter sounds. Speech perception, just hearing the nuances of how many sounds are in the word pow. P-ow. P-ow. 3 sounds, right? Because the ow is blended. The whoop, you know, like so it's p-ow. Oh, that ow can be 2. P-ow. Okay? Pow. We blend them all together. But what about squash? S-k-w-a-sh. Okay? And then like there's the number 8. 8. 2 sounds. How many letters? E-I-G-H-T. What's that about? Okay? So it's a complex process that's connecting sounds to letters. And we use our verbal memory, remembering the words we know. That's why spoken language and phonemic awareness, even without letters, even with our eyes closed, is so helpful. And we use our rapid naming skills. What happens when kids have trouble here, we kind of hope they're going to catch up. And we do everything we can. But there's so many areas, there's so many different angles that could be causing the problem. We might be helping, say with verbal memory, with a lot of vocabulary for young students, but we're not helping them with recalling letters and sounds. Or we're doing so much letters and sounds that we're not building up their vocabulary. We need to know what the weaker areas are for each student, and we need to work on them. But what happens is we get school-age children with difficulty, and they're trying really hard, and they come to school every day eager to learn, but they get to 3rd or 4th grade, and they have poor spelling and poor reading. So what this is these are the statistics from the Massachusetts Department of Ed. And these are when kids get on an IEP, typically. So we might have some kids with an IEP in pre-K, K, and 1st grade, okay? It kind of doubles from around 2,000 to just over 4,000. The gray number is all of those, remember those common ones that I told you, all the ones that could have some amount of dyslexia? It almost doubles in 2nd grade. What happens in 2nd grade, folks? We're reading single word. We're doing word level reading, and small phrases and sentences, okay? These students suddenly need an IEP. And then as reading gets more fluent, more kids need an IEP. More fluent, more kids need an IEP. And then the sad thing is, remember I said that 70% of kids who we don't catch early won't catch up? The sad thing is, these students stay on an IEP. Look how many students are staying on an IEP because, or hopefully because, we found them late. And what would happen if we found them early and did that phonemic awareness training and that letter sound knowledge training? Okay? So let's hear. This is my friend Nicholas. He went into 3rd grade and he was reading about 3 words a minute in English and about 12 words a minute in Spanish. Okay, he was in Spanish immersion. And here's his story. Can we hear? We don't have a sound.
Started getting better at reading.
Can you hear that?
And I finally caught up.
Can it go a bit louder?
But now, I'm in 4th grade and
Do we have a mic?
it's just worse now because everyone's still better. Because I'm at 3rd grade level, but I'm going into 4th grade. So it's worse.
Okay, I tell you the story because he is talking about how horrible it is, but he's at the 3rd grade level. Now remember, he was only reading about 12 words a minute, and he got in 6 months with the right instruction. He's definitely dyslexic. He's one of those double deficit kids, so he needed some real serious help and intensive help. But in 6 months with the right help, he moved up to just 1 grade level below, and I can tell you now, because this video is pretty old, he's in 7th grade, and by 4th grade he was caught up, okay? So I only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to kind of go quickly. The best time for intervention is early, but this is when we're finding most kids. I think I kind of made that point for dyslexia. I'm going to skip that part. Developmentally, these are the skills that we need to work on so that when they get to reading to learn, we've already supported them. And so what should we do about it? ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act, mentions phonological awareness as one of the things that deserves explicit and systematic intentional instruction. So our Title I programs, if we know that these students have a deficit there, we should be working on that. They also talk about phonic decoding, vocabulary, that comes next. This is pervasive, and then of course language structure. So we want to use age-appropriate methods. We want to look at the phoneme level and rhymes, syllables, words, and sentences. We want to support students as they go. And the other action that's required is if students have a deficit in any of these areas, we're supposed to use child find to screen to see if that deficit is big enough. So not every child that struggles with phonemic awareness, because remember, none of us has phonemic awareness. So in kindergarten and 1st grade, almost all kids are working on that skill. But as they get older, if they have a deficit there, then we need to support them. So this is the deficit area. So for students that could have speech and language communication, you want to ask if they have measured their phonemic awareness, measured rapid naming, measured phonological memory, and letter sound knowledge. Students that have a serious deficit there can get an IEP under speech, language, and communication. If students are already in the reading, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, they should also have they can also have an IEP based on the specific learning disability category. The reason this is important, I have one more video, but I think if you can't hear it, should I just skip that? Can you hear?
Yeah, you can hear.
Once you start hitting a certain grade where it's not about learning to read anymore, you have to read to learn and access information in a whole host of other things. If you don't get the right intervention for dyslexia, you're being held back not just in reading, which is bad enough, but in every other subject area. So you have these kids who want to learn, who are very bright, who are now held back from subject content in all areas. With a lot of the young people I work with, they will often say that they feel stupid, they feel dumb, they feel inferior. And this does not take long. It takes a very short amount of time when you recognize yourself as someone who is putting in a tremendous amount of effort and not getting the results that clearly the person next to you is getting. This does not take years and years to build up. It could take a month. It could be one experience where these people feel this way. When you feel less than, your whole self-esteem starts to plummet. Not just in your self-esteem as a student, but your self-esteem globally. You start to see yourself as an ineffective person. You start to see yourself as someone that other people probably won't like or be around. So these are individuals who can become socially isolated very quickly. One, because I don't want to be close to people because I don't want them to discover how stupid I am. Two is, what do I have to offer? What do I have to bring to the table? If clearly I can't give the output that I have. These kids are high targets of being bullied or are often normal to being the bully. I remember being in 5th grade and the sort of bully of my grade was a kid who was kept back 3 times. And looking back, there was no question that this kid had dyslexia. There was no question of seeing what his experience was. But these are kids who not only become targets for that, but because they feel inferior, are individuals who sort of accept that kind of treatment because they feel, well, if I am less than, this is what I deserve. And this is what patients have told me. Kids as young as 7 and 8 who believe that they deserve that kind of treatment. Stress. I mean, imagine going to work.
Okay, I'm gonna, because we don't have a lot of time, I'm gonna stop him, but he's on our website, that's Dr. Roberto Olivaria. Dyslexic students are not, just shut the sound off if you don't mind. Just the sound, yeah. Thank you. So you can watch that video some more, but dyslexic students are usually highly bright, average or above average intelligence. And so it's just that they're feeling inadequate because they see their peers doing so well. This is an example that we have, like this student had some speech and language and articulation issues in early kindergarten and 1st grade. And in some cases, she might have just like done well with that, so everybody said great, and they would have moved her along. But what we have here is because they're aware of the importance of phonological processing, they do a CTOP. They refer her for extra testing, and they find that she has some phonemic awareness issues. She can have that support, because any student, by the way, any student with an IEP can get, oops, sorry, what am I doing? Can get support in phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary development, reading fluency. I mean, that's pretty typical of IEPs for reading. So I have some handouts there that have sort of a layout of each specific component of reading. You can take those home with you. I also have a handout with some books and handouts for parents to go, and kid books. Because if kids are struggling to read, it's really great for them to hear some good stories about kids like themselves. These are just, we're going to wrap up with some common myths about dyslexia. Dyslexia does not need glasses. It's not a visual problem, okay? If you perform well in school, you can't possibly have dyslexia. That's not true. Many kids, especially early on, are coping. They memorize a lot, they try really hard, and they do pretty well. You have to really look for those core deficits and make sure that you're figuring out, does your child have good phonemic awareness? Are they getting that letter sound knowledge? Are they progressing in reading fluency? People who have dyslexia are unable to read. That's not true either. People who have dyslexia have to put in a little bit more effort and need to learn a little bit more specifically and explicitly to get that sound symbol relationship. But once they do, they're often very good fluent readers. All dyslexics are gifted? Not true. All dyslexics are stupid? Also not true. Dyslexia is like anything else. I'm short, I could be short and brilliant, I could be short and not so brilliant, whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's just a part of who the person is, and it goes across all demographics, and it goes across all IQs. You can have an IQ anywhere and still also be dyslexic. It's separate from IQ. And it disappears or will be outgrown. This is the worst myth of all. If your child is struggling with phonemic awareness, with rhyming, with letter sound knowledge, with early reading, they will not outgrow it. They might outlearn it. You can teach it, but you can't just outgrow it. So don't fall for that one. Dyslexia is not rare. It's the most common disability. And dyslexics will not succeed in life. Of course they will. Many dyslexics are famous and well known. I won't harp on that. It will not be helped by fish oil, glasses, tinted lenses, vision exercises, magical spells, modeling clay, inner ear improvement medicine, framing and balance or whatever. It's reading instruction, and it's the one disability that we know is connecting sounds and symbols to the letter forms. And having trouble processing that is what we need to work on, not fish oil. Not that there's anything wrong with fish oil. But thank you for listening. I hope that was helpful. Any questions? I think I'm out of time, but maybe there are. Yes.
Okay, so I have a son who is dyslexic, and I can tell you as a parent, I've been on this journey for the last 3 years, just trying to wrap my head around how, is it 1 in 10 children?
Well, it depends on who you ask,
Okay.
but that's what I put up there.
Just speaking from experience, I find he has an IEP, and the speech and language communication, I guess, disability and disorder is very, very broad. And when you're speaking specifically about his intervention and what he needs specific intervention.
He does.
And for some reason, I don't know why, and I've read up on this, it seems like dyslexia is like taboo language to put in an IEP. And I, for the life of me, don't understand why that is.
Okay, well, well, first of all, dyslexia is a disability. It's always been a disability. It's always been an IDEA law. It was always okay to say it. In 2015, the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitation in Washington listed a federal guidance, which has since been on the DESE website, and you can look it up, and it says there's no reason not to use the word dyslexia, and in fact, if you use it, you will be informing the service provider important information as to how and why to help that child. So no, there's absolutely no reason to not put it on your IEP, and I would want it on my IEP.
Okay.
The other thing, let me finish because I'll just do the whole thing. The other thing about the word dyslexia is it's always been important to screen this. It's always fit under IDEA and ESSA. But last October, the legislature passed a bill that said that all school districts will come up with better protocols, more clear protocols. So they should be saying it, they should be screening for it, they should be providing services. They always should, because of course, that's what schools are supposed to do. You know, if you're having trouble reading, you're supposed to get the right services. But the legislature has passed this law, and as a result of that law, DESE is doing some guidance. I'm very encouraged by the response from schools, by the response from DESE, because, you know, like I said, dyslexia has been around for a long time, but some of the information is sort of like put it over the top. It's overwhelming, the information. As far as IEP goes, that's not why I was invited here, but I'm happy to talk about that some other time, or you can meet me later. But yes, there are good ways or good skills that you can have, and I can talk to people offline about that.
And just my last question, so is I am the parent, so I say, okay, I know my child is dyslexic, he has all the signs of dyslexia, I've taken him to the assessments, like what more, I'm just trying to, I'm about solutions, so like what more, it is, I screened him, so what is the language, is it me advocating for my child, is the parent advocate saying, we want dyslexia, I have the assessment,
So
I've gone to MGH, like what is the school looking for that says, okay, we're going to use that term, because I'm finding they're not using the term, and I don't know what it is I'm doing wrong so that they can begin to use
you
it.
are not doing anything wrong.
Okay.
You put it in writing,
Yeah?
and they have to give you an in-writing answer why they wouldn't do it.
Okay.
Okay? But do you follow Decoding Dyslexia online?
I do.
I hope you will. So private message me,
Yeah.
and I can hold your hand and walk you through it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Super. Thank you so much.
I'll put it in.
Because I missed the first time.
And then I will send it. Yes, okay. I hope you guys really found this very, very informative. I've been dying. I've been coming to the SpEdPAC meeting for almost a year now. And when I came in, I didn't read that much. Can you hear me? Just to let you know, there's kids in the back, and also we have a child care on the left side of the library. If you have kids, you can bring them to the child care. But I want to say thank you to Nancy, and as a new board member, and I know that this is very important to just coming into this new year, talk about reading, and this is a big topic that I found that parents really need about dyslexia. So with no further ado, I would love to introduce two students that's dyslexic to follow up on that and talk a little bit about their journey and as well the self-esteem part of it. So it's my honor to introduce you Harrison and as well Stephen Hilaire. So they'll be able to talk briefly about their journey and as well, how they are doing now as being a dyslexic, the way they were before and how they're doing. So you guys are up. You speak loud or you can say anything. Coming from the State House or DC and trying to testify, and also you can see that there is hope. If you have a kid who's struggling, trust me, I have a child who's dyslexic. I know the struggle. I've been there and I'm still going through it. It's not just about the reading, but the other part as well is the self-esteem. Because then the child is really putting themselves down and then they have so much struggles. And in the reading, they can probably not be able to read. But at the same time, you see the child is depressed, anxiety, social emotional. You're going to have a high bill of going to those therapy. And then you're going to see those therapy doesn't work for you. So as a parent, I can testify on that. Do not give up because you're your first child advocate. So without further ado, my testimony. I love to facilitate, so I can just give my testimony on that, so which is great. Unfortunately, Aaron couldn't be here with us tonight, so he's one of the coordinators from the Perkins Library. For children who does have learning disability as a reading, and you see your child is really struggle, especially on different grades when they have books to read, they cannot read the book, they don't want to read, they don't want to do any of those works. But also there's resources out there. As a parent, you can also look for it. We do have book shares, but sometimes you don't have the instructions or have the knowledge to apply for it. But the Perkins Library, they come around. It's not only for Braille, people who's blind.
Player on. Press any button to learn about its function. Battery charge remaining 14 hours.
Wow. So this device is for kids who cannot read or cannot follow it. So this is kind of a similar as a book share, but you don't have to follow it on the computer. But it's just like a headset you put on, or you can make it loud. You put the tape inside of it. It's story time, and then you can read and listen. You can listen to the story. So it's like storytellers. So instead of, probably don't want to read for your child, like the third grade or fourth grade, you can apply for it. And I do have some applications here. And then you can, when they send it to you, you fill out the application and you have your doctor to sign it for it and you just mail it. Everything is free. You don't have to pay a dime for it. They will send you the machine. They will send, and based on your book, kind of a books your child wants to read or interested on, so you can select them. Was it fiction, non-fictions, and then you send it out. They will send those books, those tape back, and your child will be able to just read it. My daughter read most of her reading over the summer with that because I didn't want to fight with her, going to the library and take books and stuff like that. She picked her own book, but this was like a lifesaver for me because she walking in the house, her headset on, she's going to bed. I don't have to read to her or fight with her to say, okay, it's time to read. So she just put her book and then she was just going on with it. She read about, I would say 10 books over the summer in the period of time. And you have chapter books. You can do 1, 2, 3 chapter books, or you just do one particular book. So there's a tons of different things that you can be able to get from Perkins. And again, it's free. There's like, not only for children, they also have adult books as well. If you're interested, you can even request some of the adult book as well. And every quarter, they send a list of all the books that's available. And they'll be able to, you can pick which one you want, and then you send it out. And then in 2 days, all the tapes comes to you, and then you'll be able to enjoy them. I do have some information about it, and then you can take a look at it. And I do have some application. If not, I can email them, the applications to you. You just fill it out, just have your doctor sign on it, and then you just send it out. So it'll be great. Any questions? Questions in the back?
No, she's not.
Is there any information in regards to additional resources, like, so we have that there, but like tutoring, affordable programs, like tutoring, or even something as simple like, so we're talking about the social emotional piece, right? And there are strength in numbers. So are there any book clubs for children that are struggling with reading that they can get together and, you know, once a week or on the weekends or something like that? Does anybody know of anything?
So what I would suggest, there's a couple of different things. There's Decoding Dyslexia in Massachusetts. We're online, we're on Facebook, and we have a website. We're actually gonna have a big family fest so that kids can meet other kids and everybody there will be celebrating Dyslexia Awareness Month in October. It's October 19th. And we can give you the information, but it's on our website. On the Facebook page, a lot of parents get together, and you can even have a local group, like we can start a support, the dyslexia family support group on reading, you can call it whatever you want, you don't have to call it dyslexia. But we can start a family support group here. We can, there's something called the YES program. Bev, your kids, did they do YES?
My kids do YES.
YES,
They do skiing, but they have outdoor activities, camp, rock climbing, track and field all year long.
The YES program came to us last year, so if you look at our videos on the SpEdPAC YouTube channel, they were at the, I believe it was the February or March presentation. Some of their students came and spoke about their program, the YES program through Learning Ally, which is a paid subscription, but Bookshare is the free version of that.
Right, and Massachusetts has some Learning Ally,
Boston Public School does have subscriptions to
so you
Learning
can
Ally.
ask and see if there's some available, and then, so, Learning Ally, Eye to Eye, older students, Eye to Eye is a, you can just Google them or whatever, they have a Facebook page. There's a lot of, support out there. for
And you can
kids.
also ask for these things to be written into the IEP through a technical assistance evaluation, so that the school will have the TA person, right, you have it written, they'll get tested and evaluated for it, and then whatever those resources are written into the IEP, and the school system is supposed to pay for it. So we do have that, and then if we're out of district, so we have to schedule for my kids to come back in to get those services. So even though we're at a different school, we're still getting services from BPS because they're not paying for the tuition. We are still, and we haven't gone to court or made a settlement, they are still able to get services through BPS, and we also use a BPS school bus.
Also, like MGH as well, they usually have some programs they run during the summertime. If you LinkedIn, you go to their website and you sign up to their emails, they'll be able to tell you what kind of the program that they do have. And some of the time it's like a low fee or for free. The waiting list might be long, but I would suggest parents to just sign very early. As soon as you know that something is not clicking with you, just sign on it, and then you can be able to get some resources down there.
And you also asked about tutoring, right? So, non-school private tutoring, Mass General Hospital Institute, not the hospital, but it's called MGH Institute, and it's in Charlestown. They have a list, you can call their lab, it's a speech language, they have a dyslexia lab, you'll know, you have to call the number, transfer me there. They have lists of people that are available. They also do, some of those programs.
The writing
workshop
program.
and things like that, so there's some, and you can, if you message us, if you go online and you're in either Facebook or the website, and you message any question to Decoding Dyslexia, you're gonna get one of us, and we're gonna answer you right away, okay?
There's also
There's one more question.
extended day or extended school year, where the summer school program offers Wilson at a couple of sites that are within the city as well. You would have to get approved for that through your IEP and have it written in the form.
Yeah.
¿Qué está pasando con los niños más pequeños de 3, 4 años, 5 años en la escuela? ¿Cómo se les está dando atención temprana a esos niños?
What's going on with the younger children, like those that are 3, 4, 5 years old? What kind of attention are they receiving?
what kind of attention they're receiving, based of what? Is it like a learning or behavior, or what exactly?
Speed down. To decrease the reading speed by 1 step, press the speed down button. Rewind. Press this rewind button once to move back power. Player off.
I'm sorry, my child is testing that.
In general, could be learning, reading, language. Like at the very beginning where they could be diagnosed with dyslexia, how are they getting support?
Yeah, as, go ahead.
So I'm gonna take this. So does your child receive services?
Yeah, early intervention.
No, I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, she's pre-kinder right now.
So
She can get
she can receive services. So what parents need to do is they can do, we call it a parent referral. So she writes a letter to the district or an email, and and says, I suspect a problem with speech, language, and possibly dyslexia. They don't usually diagnose at younger ages, but they can see those early language skills, the phonological processing, and the rapid naming, which is a visual processing. They'll measure those. There's something called a CTOP, a CTOPP, and the CTOP is a children's test of phonological processing. And that would be an important test for any 4-year-old, 5-year-old, okay?
One more question, because we have to wrap up. Yeah, go ahead.
How do you get, my child is 5, just turned 6. He has the 3 to 5-year-old test done, he's 5 and 11, and he has an IEP for speech, but I feel as though the school is not giving me all of the information that I need to properly advocate for my son. So are there anyone that I can go to help me advocate better for my son?
As Nancy mentioned, Decoding Dyslexia is a Facebook or website, and I will suggest, and it's free advice, and I will suggest you to just go on there and ask your questions, and we'll be able to just follow up with you on that. There is tons of other organizations, like you have the federations, that you can be able to ask for, advocate, and to whether look at your IEP or go to an IEP meeting with you. And they'll be able to just coach you on that. Nancy and I, we can talk to you off, and then we'll be able to just help you whatever we can. It's as I said, every child is different. Every IEP is different. I cannot tell you I will have the answer for you or we'll have the solutions for you, but at least we can say, okay, this is what you should be able to do and how to guide you to that process of it.
People that are concerned, okay, like you have a concern and you have a 5-year-old and you have some information, you can email me. My email happens to be on the green one if anybody's looking for it, okay? You can email me, make a time. If you have what you have in front of you, I can walk you through it and say, okay, you have this, we have this. If there's nothing missing, I can say, you know what, you're all set. If I see something missing, I'll say, you know what, at this age, if it were my child, I would ask for this, and I'll walk you right through it.
And there's also Parent University that is through BPS as well, and they have some of their classes are ongoing, but they're at the bowling building when they do have their classes, and some of the topics, depending on the variety of different diagnoses that we're all dealing with, they have classes as well that show you how to go through the parent rights packet that we get. And if you go through that packet and check every link that's on there, it will also guide you through on what your next steps can be.
Okay.
And that helps.
Perfect. So I really appreciate all the questions, and I just trying to be on the time, and then just want to.
And this presentation may answer some of these additional questions
Right.
you guys are also having. Talk about what BPS is offering for some of the students and the services. So if we can get started with her presentation, I think some of those questions, if they're not, you can also reach us offline and we can proceed from there.
Perfect, thank you. So as Wax mentioned, we do have Debra and as well from Christine from BPS, and they'll be able to talk. They form the special ed department, and they'll be able to talk more about the services and what exactly that they'll be able to just guide and help you through, I'll be with you.
Deb, before you start, I just want to make sure that we talked earlier that transportation would be here to address if anyone had any concerns. Forgive me if I pronounce it wrong, please. But Ms. Delaburn is here and can also separately address issues outside quietly so not to disturb the next speaker. So can you just raise your hand so everyone can see who you are? So that's her right there. Any transportation things, not to bombard you, but take your time, and then if you speak to transportation, she can help you kind of solve some of the issues that are still ongoing. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. As mentioned, I'm Deb Gately, and I'm an Assistant Director for BPS Special Ed. I am Assistant Director for Region 2A. We're now regionalized in BPS, and I oversee 13 schools, primarily in Alston, Brighton, Jamaica Plain, Roxbury, and one in Dorchester. My colleague, Chris Panarese, is the Assistant Director for 2B. So within Boston Public Schools, there are 6 Assistant Directors for grades K to 8. And we oversee in our direct contacts for schools to provide supports to them. We also have our secondary assistant directors and a transition assistant director. So one of the things that I just wanted before we started here tonight, and we're going to kind of go through some of our information rather quickly to allow for questions, is the understanding that we are also resources to all of you through your schools. And I heard mentioned a question about, questions that I have at the school level and questions that I feel like I really don't have answered. We are your direct contacts. We are your liaisons to be able to help you navigate those processes. And again, there was also a question about evaluations for younger students. We have 4 times a year for ages 3 to 5, as well as ages 6 to 22, child find sessions that are federally mandated that we hold as a district. And as Boston residents, you are entitled to go to these screenings and register your children for free to have them initially screened if you haven't done so, and to make a determination in whether or not what additional evaluation needs to happen. I do want to mention, just because someone brought it up, that the first child find screening for BPS for ages 3 to 5 is on October 1st at the Campbell Resource Center. And if anybody has questions about that, we'd be happy to answer them as well, and provide you with the information on how to register for that. So again, I also do not want to miss out on the fact of introducing some of our members of our Applied Behavior Analysis, or ABA team. Want to give a wave, friends? Hello? Yes? So again, they are also part of our department, and they're here as well to answer any questions that you have. And please also realize, as very excited as Chris and I are about to talk about this topic, that if you really need a question to ask to transportation or to our ABA team, please go ahead and do so, because we want to make sure that you are using your time effectively. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about, Chris and I actually do professional development throughout the district on executive functioning. Chris and I are both kind of transformed a bit coming into BPS, as we were formerly classroom teachers and also principals. So then we transitioned into BPS and work in special education. And executive functioning has always been something that she and I are very much in tune with, to try to explain to people and to help people help kids. Because when kids are diagnosed or evaluated, or a lot of people use the term executive functioning, parents especially, or people who work with kids, are trying to wrap their head around the fact of, what does this actually mean? What does executive functioning look like, and how can I help the student in the process? So very quickly, we wanted to take a look at, can you just go back? Yep, right there, thank you. So we just wanted to look at identifying some things about executive functioning, what's the factors that impact the development of your child's skills, and then examining some resources. If you have not gotten them, on this table are open resources, which mean they are available online to you, but we printed them for you. Some really great resources on executive functioning. There's a particular one that Chris had found called Executive Functioning 101 that really pieces together some nice information for you. So again, without getting, and I'm not going to get into the brain science and the analysis, this graphic is something that really shows the design of how our brain works. And if we look at executive control, language and speech, memory for habits, imagination, creativity, emotional response, judgment, move, and learning, in terms of that front part of the brain, this is all interconnected. Go on to the next one. So this is one of my favorite graphics that's related to executive functioning, because when you think about all the things that that part of your brain is responsible for, you can look at it as kind of being a conductor, right? So all of this area up here is executive functioning, and this part is basically trying to conduct the rest of the brain on how to figure out and interpret things. And students early on, when they're diagnosed or identified with executive functioning processing issues, there's missing pieces to that. It really has to do with prior experiences, what they've been exposed to, in order to be able to put those things together. Go ahead. So again, executive function is a set of mental processes that help connect an individual's past experience with their present action. And a lot of what we wanted to share tonight are things that you can effectively do to help strengthen and build executive functioning skills, because you're a partner to what happens in schools, right? Identified services, how executive functioning can be enhanced, but then how do you support that at home? And one of the other things that Chris and I emphasize, every one of us have executive functioning issues to some capacity, right? I happen to be, just a very brief story, I happen to be someone that uses color coding for everything, because that is the only way I know how to effectively organize things. So I oversee 13 schools. 13 schools, I have 13 different color folders, so that I know that I'm going to the school in Brighton, that I have that folder. If I'm going to a school in Jamaica Plain, I have that folder. And it's just a matter of organization. And we all have some degree of executive functioning need, because we've all had different experiences throughout our lives that help form those processes. And that exactly happens within our kids in trying to figure out what they've experienced.
Deb.
Yeah.
So when we do this course with educators at BPS, we have a little chart and a little test that we give. It's a pre-test, and we say you can use this for your children in school and your students. But we have our teachers and our educators take this. Almost every single PD, people come up and say, I have weaknesses here, I have weaknesses here, and they've identified their own weaknesses and strengths in their executive functioning skills. So it's a good tool not only to use for children, but for themselves as well.
Exactly. Can you go back one slide, please? So again, we're looking at executive functioning. There are a set of skills for self-management, self-regulation, focusing, paying attention, organizing, starting, and finishing schoolwork. One of the things that, again, and my ABA friends can attest to this, is this idea of self-regulation. Many of you have probably seen on IEPs a self-regulation goal, self-regulation service delivery. And a lot of what's happening in that is strengthening executive functioning skills within students so that they can approach a task. Self-regulation, I need to be very, very clear about this, that yes, it can be related to regulating behaviors, but behaviors aren't always externalized. Sometimes it's how I'm processing something to be able to figure out how to get that job done. And when we look at that, every child has a function to the behavior that they have, and sometimes the function is the inability to be able to approach a task. And you have to help a child be able to figure that out. So these, one more back. It's okay. So this is information for children with well-developed executive functioning skills. And when we show this information, people often say to us, yeah, well, that's what my child has trouble with. So this is, again, kids who have well-developed skills. They know how to make plans and initiate the first step. They keep track of time and finish work on time. They keep track of more than one thing at once, meaning they know how to multitask, meaningfully include past knowledge in discussions, evaluating ideas and reflect on their work, ask for help or seek more information when they need it, know how to engage within groups, wait to speak before they're called on, and make mid-course corrections while thinking, speaking, reading, and writing. So in looking at that and what I've said, and again, you don't have to, big hands or whatever. And can anybody relate to this, to seeing something that their child might be challenged by? Does that resonate with some of you? Right, and that's again, something that we need to consider when we're looking at enhancing executive functioning skills. And I can tell you as an assistant director within the district, and many of you probably have experienced the process of having a neuropsychological evaluation conducted on your child, that executive functioning comes up a lot. And how do you address that? Go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
These bullet lists that you have up there.
Yes.
Is that age specific in any way?
It
seems like
so it's developed.
4-year-old wouldn't have most of those. Right?
Yeah. So again, it can be considered a developmental process at different stages of a child's development. But again, they can also be strengthened as a child becomes older, and that's that was not a planted question, by the way, because this is exactly related to what I'm going to talk about now. So thank you. So the executive functioning development chart, and again, I apologize for the fact that on your handout as well as the graphic it might be hard to interpret, but we do have at the bottom where you can find it online if you want to look at it more closely. This is looking at a child from a person from age 5 all the way up to 22. And when you consider the developmental spurts that happen, we're looking at the ability to formulate goals. Working memory developed by age 14, attentional capacity, usually by ages 16 or 17. So when you think about that graphic that we showed you about brain development and what we're asking kids to do and whether or not they're developmentally achieving that piece, that's a huge piece of understanding, right? You have to consider where a child is at in their development before you can address how things are done. And what we have and what we emphasize in our courses to teachers is understanding you have to give the kids those skills. You have to say, this is your notebook. This is how I expect your notebook to be arranged. This is the color paper that we're going to use for that. And when that is done effectively, kids benefit from that. So, yeah.
What is the website? I can't.
Yep, so it's, did you get a handout, because it's also on that?
It's so small, I can't
Yep,
read it
so
on that
let me
either.
tell it to you.
Okay.
rainbowrehab.com.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So again, when you're looking at, ages 5 to 6, inhibition of impulses dominates. Yes, yes they do. And then when you're kind of going through the ages of adolescence, ongoing increase in planning skills, then planning skills reaching maturity, and then the peak planning ability is between ages 18 and 20. So you have to consider in the lifespan of a child how long it takes to develop those skills. So again, we are here to offer you with some insight and resources on how to build these planning skills. Step-by-step visual directions and instructions. Writing things out for kids methodically, the use of checklists, the use of graphic organizers, and explicitly teaching students how to use those graphic organizers. You can make a wonderful graphic organizer, but if you're not looking at how to arrange the information, then it really is difficult for a child to interpret that. Model planning by verbalizing your own thought process. Teaching the students between the difference between short and long-term goals, having them practice in writing after they give a performance prompt. So, and that can happen at home anytime, right? If you have a plan for the day and you're verbalizing it and letting your child know what's going to happen in the meantime, they're able to process it that much easier when it comes time to happen. You'll often see that reflected on IEPs of previewing and reviewing. Building the student schema to support students in making connections and turning rubrics into checklists. I don't know how many of you have ever had the experience of getting a rubric from an assignment and you're asked to, your child is asked to complete something and you have to refer to the rubric. The easiest way to get through to make sure that your child is maximizing their achievement with an assignment is to turn it into a checklist. So you can say, did we do this? Check. Did we do this? Check. And then it makes it more manageable because sometimes those assignments can get very daunting and overwhelming for students And if you're chunking that material, it makes it much more manageable. Again, these were just sample charts that we wanted to share with you that were all accessed off of the web. Looking at a routine chart that your students can use. This could be actually for any younger age students up through, I would say, 8th grade. What you're doing when you get home from school. Some of you may have chore charts, but having a routine that's set and written that your child can check off and acknowledge that each is done is important. Go ahead. This is another chart. Here's what to think about before starting a new task. Stop, think, plan, do. So stop what I'm doing. What do I need to do? Do I have a checklist? Plan, how to plan out the steps, fill out the checklist, sit down and start working. If you frame a task for a student, this can be a schoolwork assignment, this could be a task that you're asking them to complete as part of a household routine. This is another way to enhance their executive functioning skills because you're allowing them and giving them a visual to plan out. Just gonna go ahead and move that.
Next slide.
Yep. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. This one Chris found, which I think is a lot of fun, from stickerartdecor.com. This is something that you can put on order and even make, because I know there's some people that are very creative to be able to do this. And having something on the wall before your child leaves for school and hanging everything on the wall so that they're not forgetting anything. We hear all the time in the concerns of my child left their homework folder at home, or my child did his homework but he never turned it in. So what is set up at home for them to be able to know what they need to take before they leave each day? So I'm going to turn it over right now to Chris, who's going to talk a little bit more about what's called cognitive flexibility.
So cognitive flexibility is to be able to take your ideas that you've learned and be flexible with them. This is a skill I didn't learn until I was 40. So I kind of stick in the mud, and it's hard for me to have cognitive flexibility, but really it's the higher order processes. It means that we have all these skills, right? We've developed all of these skills, and now we're able to use them in such a manner that we take other people's ideas. We are open to other people's ideas. We are not defensive with those ideas. And that every opportunity that we go through life is a learning experience for us. And we're going to take all that positiveness with us and none of the negativeness that goes with learning. Next slide, please. So the cognitive flexibility strategies, we do too many shifts of the types of questions that we're trying to answer. If a student has 5 multiple choice and then we have an open response, it's like, no, I want the multiple choice. How do we help our student adjust or our child adjust? Do we have them take out all of the open response questions for homework first and put those over to one side and just concentrate maybe before dinner or whatever on the multiple choice and then maybe tackle those after or vice versa? Are there incentives for every one of those longer type of questions that we have to do? We can identify and practice and learn those coping and problem-solving skills to not to the point where our child has anxiety. And on the next slide, we're going to look at the idea of failure and how to fail well. And I know that's not something we always talk about, but do we teach our children to fail well? Do we instill a growth mindset, or are we always kind of with that fixed mindset that I've always had trouble with math, I can't read? And that narrative repeats itself in our child's mind. It is the expectation that you will struggle with math. It is the expectation that you will struggle with your reading. We all have, and we all do. It's not how many times you fail or how many times you have difficulty. It's how many times you persevere and use that knowledge of failure to catapult you towards success. I always used to tell my students in math, they hated math. I was a special ed teacher of math. Nobody comes to you loving math, right? But I used to tell my students, be like the boxer. It's not how many times you hit the mat. It's how many times you get up. And what did we learn from our experience? Everything that we fail at gives us a valuable tool to use for success. And learn to pluck that failure out deconstruct it, and use it in a manner that's going to ensure success next time. So here are some graphic organizers of the fixed mindset. I always make mistakes, I'm no good, I'm going to break the pencil, I'm out of here, I'm not doing homework. We've all been there with our kids, I'm sure. And here's the growth mindset. I'm having difficulty. Well, how much difficulty do I need? And one of the resources that we provided is a little bit of a self-reflection. It allows you to gauge just exactly where your child needs their help. Does he need constant help, or does she need always help first to you before she starts to think through the process? And if you begin to recognize that with that little checkoff list that we have given, you'll be able to intervene on that level. If the default is always you, before we even try, then we know we have to make sure that our child is not in fear of trying. So, even with help, I don't get it. I'm not getting get it. I've got my mind made up. This is a fixed mindset. Help me a little, and I got it. Growth mindset. I need some more practice. Being able to recognize that, I've made mistakes, but I'm just going to keep practicing, because anything we practice at, we're good at. Look at the Patriots, right? I need a challenge. Okay.
Sorry.
Excuse me, sorry. I need a challenge, or I can help somebody else. That's ultimately where we want to be, right? I've overcome this. I've made so many mistakes. Why should I let this person beside me make all those mistakes? I can coach this person now. That's the true idea of internalizing that learning. So there's some, I know this is a SPEED presentation, we apologize for that, but there's lots of resources there that will fill in anything else that you may need. And please feel free to reach out to either one of us if we can help answer any questions.
And one of the things that I just wanted to conclude with when Chris was talking about a fixed versus growth mindset, I shared this story with a group of teachers that we ran a course for last year, and I feel like I have a great story about fixed mindset. When I was 12 years old, I decided that I was never going to be good at math. Just never. I had teachers that I felt didn't believe in me, and as wonderful as my parents were, they were like, you need to listen to the teacher, they know what they're talking about. And I developed a math phobia at the age of 12. And as I continued through high school, I was in, upper level classes for English and history and basic skills math, because I didn't think I had the ability to do it. And what was fascinating about it is when shortly after I got out of college, I got a part-time job working at a clothing store. And at that time, because early 90s, there really wasn't a way to just automatically put into a computer to tell someone how much a percentage off something was, so I had to be able to figure it out. I was about 24 before I actually figured out how to do percentages. Because someone was paying me to know how to do percentages. That didn't fit, that didn't click with me when I was 12 years old. I didn't understand why I was trying to learn this information, and it didn't click until much later in my life when it actually had meaning. So growth mindset is a huge piece to this. When you have mindfulness and activities that are able to make you think about, why am I learning this information? How is this applicable to my life? We talk about this all the time with kids, right? About looking at how this is going to affect you in your later life. And again, I am proud of the fact that went on and got my teaching degree and other college degrees after that, but every once in a while, yes, there are issues where I still have that I pull out the calculator because I just can't do it in my head. And that's who I am, and I own that. But again, we have strengths in other areas, and if we keep letting our kids know that you're not going to be perfect at everything, but trying to develop their skills on how to at least approach something without getting frustrated, that's really what we're hoping you can take from this, and looking at strengthening their executive functioning and working with the school program to be able to make that happen. And again, if you haven't gotten them, the handouts are over there. I also know that Lisa, as a resource, as our parent resource person, she can also get it to you as well if we ran out of copies.
We're going to post the information on our website, but please know that your children need to have the tools also. You can have a great growth mindset, but if you don't have some of the tools that are needed, if you need to be taught explicitly on some things, then regardless of growth mindset you have, you may not be able to succeed. So that is with a combination with appropriate resources to make you able to be successful. So take what you can from all these presentations. We will definitely be posting these handouts on the SpEdPAC website, right on the general page under the dates. Also, I know the only presentation we will not be posting is Nancy's, just because we asked permission from our speakers to be able to post them. But she has given out a different handout and little notes also. And you can go to Decoding Dyslexia to get this information. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight, because one of the feedback we took from everyone last year too was that, we kept running over. So we're really trying to focus this year on making sure we can get home to our kids and the homework and the dinner and whatever else we may have in life. So thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to touch base with the speaker. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. My bad. Please listen up.
I want to say thank you to all the speakers, Nancy, Stephen, Hilaire, Debra, and Christine. Thank you for giving us the time to be here to teach us, to share resources with us. And if you guys have any questions, please email SpEdPAC. We'll be able to try to get those information back to you as early as we can.
And I would like to thank Fabienne, who's done all this work and organizing and put this evening together. So thank you.